All right, everybody, we back again for the Wu series. The saga of the Wu Tang continues, and we're doing a review of episode two. I'm Kual, and this is my co-host Maria, and I just kind of want to recap a little bit on episode one, even though we're gonna. This is perfect. We could segue into episode two as we recap episode one. So I got a question. Um, why was going to North Carolina one of the worst things to happen to Bobby, aka the RZA? Why do you think it was said in that episode that going to North Carolina was one of the worst things that happened to him from episode one?
I don't, you have to remind me about that. I don't remember that part. So
Okay, there was a scene where he was trying to tell his brother he had to man up and be tough and handle his responsibilities. And he was like, I think going to North Carolina was the worst thing that happened to you. And then they went into the flashbacks of, the domestic abuse that was happening and all around and why he was sent down south to get away.
When he was a little kid.
When he was a little kid. Yeah, but Divine in present day was telling him how he felt that going to North Carolina was the worst thing that happened to him. If you can't answer it, I'll take a stab at it. Well, I think that question was asked because he felt that Bobby had his head in the clouds and was so focused on music that he couldn't take care of, the day-to-day activities that they needed to do to get this money, in order to keep a roof over their head. The older brother Devon was, he had a mission and a plan for, the products that were coming into Staten Island for the first time. And he needed, Bobby to ride shotgun and hold him down, but Bobby was, getting lost in his thoughts with music. And I guess, they had flashbacks of like why they went to North Carolina in the first place. And Bobby was sent down there to get away from like the domestic violence. And, I guess you could imagine it must have been his father having issues with him or the mother. And in order for him to escape all of the domestic violence, he probably was sent down south. And they showed an uncle talking to him about imagination and stuff. So I guess that's when he, started letting his imagination run wild. And, some people think like rural environments or suburban environments, can lead to a softer mentality. Like, you're not street smart enough, you're not city enough. And so I think the brother was implying, man, you went down there and you got all of these lofty ideas in your head, and you can't stay focused and do what needs to be done to survive in the city. I think that was what that was about. All right, you remember any of that?
Mm-hmm. I remember it. Yeah.
Okay. Another question for recapping the first episode is, what are your thoughts on the children, or what are your thoughts on how the children were disciplined?
Which children are you talking about? When they were kids and they were sent to their relatives. You mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. When the two brothers were there.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought it was terrible personally. I mean, like you leave the lights on and you get whipped. I mean, that seemed unnecessary. But it wasn't all. I mean, you didn't see that many. Don't remember that many scenes of discipline. I mean, was he the uncle? I mean, he seemed like
he was the uncle, and he seemed
guy.
pretty fair
he seemed
and
fair.
loving.
It was the lady
inspirational,
that she didn't seem like she was really a likable character early at all.
Right.
So
okay.
I don't know. I don't feel that helps kids.
Yeah. Some people argue that when kids are spanked, profusely the way that they are, like in this film, that it tends to, it breeds a mentality that might is right, and so kids will tend to become more violent. That's a theory. There may be something to that. Um, I like old school strict discipline. I think spanking should be a last resort, but I don't think that they should be ruled out. Like it depends on what happens. I don't think timeouts work for everybody. Um, I think that they should be explored. I think many methods of discipline should be explored, many of which don't involve spanking, but spanking should be a last resort. And I don't think it should be ruled out, but that's enough about that. I don't want to go too deep in that. I have my own views. Um, so my last question for recap on episode 1 was, why do you think the mom would keep a place for the vine at the table when he was locked up?
Well, I mean, she loves him, obviously, and it sounds like he was the one she saw as being very responsible, because she said when he says he's going to do something, he's going to do it.
And the breadwinner too.
Yeah, oh, that's true. Like the head of the man of the house, basically. Yes. But I think she just missed him so much, and she just wanted him to be there in spirit, I guess.
Yeah, I think in the inner cities, like some of the saving graces are the mother's love, like how the women respond to the men. You can have girlfriends who are very loving and supporting. You can have a mother that's very loving and supporting, or maybe even a father. But you need love and support in order to overcome all of the hardships. Like without that, I think that's where a lot of the kids fall short. Because there's some parents that'll kick somebody out of the house, and then there'll be teens forced to fend for themselves, and there almost is no coming back from those situations. But
it's like unconditional love.
Another topic I wanted to deal with is like it's weird because it seems like in some situations the things that the kids are doing, like selling drugs, morally, that can be seen as wrong. But growing up there, you understand how many feel like that's the last alternative, or should be a last alternative. Like it just is something that probably shouldn't be done. But when you grow up there, you realize that you don't have many alternatives, and so people have to do what they have to do to survive, whether it's right or wrong. And it's interesting that some parents will be dead set against it. Other parents are, what do you think would make a parent turn a blind eye to their kids selling drugs and accepting the rewards from that?
I mean, just pure sort of need, I guess. I mean, it's like you need to. You have little kids, you got to feed them. It's the survival, really.
Yeah. I mean, like I'm trying to have issues with the mom being okay with it, but me growing up in those situations, like I thoroughly understand. It's like I could take the hard stance and not support my child, not love my child, kick my child out, and they're only gonna get worse. Plus, bills have to be paid,
and she's working and
it does help.
Yeah, and she's working 2 shifts. And how many kids are there? 4.
There's 4
kids,
in that's depicted, but the RZA said he had a lot of other brothers and sisters that he couldn't put all 11 of them in there. I think he said something like 11.
Yeah, I mean, I can barely. We have 2 kids. I can barely afford the 2, and so 4 kids. You got to
do what you got to do.
Food
Got to make it happen.
Yeah.
All right. Let me see. What are some of the questions that you may have for episode 2? Now that we've recapped a lot of episode 1, you have any interesting questions for episode 2?
Well, this would be episode 1 and 2.
Okay.
But why did those 2 let's see, Shaw
Shaw,
and
aka
yeah,
Raekwon.
and Power is that his sidekick or whatever his friend?
Yeah,
Why,
Power's like the boss, the
mhm.
ringleader.
So why did they have such an issue with these other guys? I mean, it seems like they were out to kill him, and I never saw
Like
any
they primarily
reason.
seem to be after Dennis.
Yeah, exactly. So
Now, I'm not sure if it's something that Dennis did in the past. That is a really good question.
mhm.
Dennis seems like the type of person, like he's very strict on the streets. Like, he holds people accountable and he'll shake them down and rough them up. Give them some tough love. And not many people like it. And I think in one of the episodes, because he burnt this dude's face, he went and snitched to some other people. He snitched on Dennis and the RZA, and he snitched to Power and Shy. So, uh, yeah, when you are as strict as Dennis, aka Ghostface, and you rule with an iron fist, Iron Man, um, you ruffle a lot of feathers and people are upset. Tough love, it's hard to deal with for many. Um, I'm not really mad at Dennis's tough love because that environment, like, you have to be a man of your word. Like, people are trying to survive and eat off of the work that you're responsible for. So if you let people down, somebody could get killed on the behalf of because of a stupid mistake. If your team isn't watching each other's back and being sharp, somebody could get killed. So everybody has to be alert and on point. And that's what they're telling Bobby, because he's the music man. His head is so in the clouds. Like, Shaw was calling him, trying to let him know to get out of the house. And he's so into his music that, he almost got burnt up in the fire. That warning call could have saved them. Luckily, they got out of the fire on their own merit. Um, but it's a good thing that Bobby, aka the RZA, did have that spark of imagination. And it's a good thing that he did keep his head in the clouds, because ultimately, knowing the story of the Wu, that's really what saved them. That spark of imagination, that creativity, that dream, that lofty goal that almost got him killed. Um, let's see. Any other questions?
Well, I mean, that was you sort of partly answered it, but
Okay.
between the two brothers, who's right? Like, like, there's the one with the dreams, and then there's the one with, like, you got to pay the bills. Like, we have to pay the bills. So you need to stop messing around with, wasting time doing stuff that's not making any money. Mm-hmm. So you can see both sides, mm-hmm. but
Well, that's put in a question, which brother is. Well, sometimes in life you realize there can be two different arguments made and two different points of view, and both could be right. I think they were both right, because you need money sometimes to finance those lofty goals and dreams.
Because otherwise, how is he going to buy his drum machine? Which then he returned.
Yeah.
Was that? Oh, well, that might be too far ahead. But he bought it with the money that he got because of his brother.
Oh yeah.
So.
Yeah. So I mean, I think they totally are both right. One is more practical, and one, and it has a mentality, cash rules everything around me, which it does. But the bigger picture is like living out your dreams by any means necessary. It's unfortunate that by any means usually translates into something illegal. But, if society was a little different, any means could be a job or college or, some other positive, more progressive means. However, in the inner city, it's not a lot of opportunity. There needs to be more opportunities created and less discrimination, less racism, less prejudice. But until that happens, then a lot of the dreams will be financed by drug culture, game culture. But yeah, I think that they were both right, and I want to say if one was more right, it would be the RZA, because if the RZA didn't keep his eye on the prize and just wholeheartedly delved into drugs, it might be no way out. Um, and I think, knowing the story of the Wu, money was used to invest into successful careers where they could lead the streets. And so I think the RZA was more right. Instead of Bobby giving up on his dream and following his brother, headline and sinker, and delving into that world, he did keep his eye on the prize. And I think that eventually his brother was able to be convinced, obviously, to go the music route, but they did need that seed money, that capital, which a lot of artists are starving to get. Um, I think you had a third question.
Yeah, which is, what is your favorite character?
What or who is my favorite?
Yeah, sorry, not what, who.
Who is my
Who is your
favorite
favorite
character? Let's see.
Yeah.
I like the way that Ghostface is depicted, or Dennis. Like, he's hardcore, slap somebody up, burn their face, but then turn around and, really take care of his younger brothers in wheelchairs, dive to cover them from bullets and to shield them from bullets, feeding them, like, laughing, making jokes with them, and, just taking time and being a caregiver. And there are actors in this show that I really like. I think the guy who plays Sha slash Raekwon is doing a good job. I think the character that plays Divine, I've watched documentaries of Divine, and the way the guy talks, I said this before, reminds me so much of Divine. So I think he's spot on. I think the guy who plays the old dirty bastard is nailing it. The guy that plays Raekwon is doing a good job. Method Man's Dave East is doing a pretty decent job of Method Man. Sometimes I feel like it's Method Man for real, but let me see who else. I like the guy that plays Power. I've met Power before, and I would hear about him being the executive producer of all of their albums, and the guy who was putting up the money in, and he's from their same neighborhood. I'm like, how did this dude get all that money to invest in the Wu like that? You know what I'm saying? How did he become the one who gets paid first? Where he has enough to invest and then get paid first off the profits. How did that happen? And it was a no-brainer. I'm from the neighborhood, so I could put two and two together, and I'm telling you. But I was very curious. It's like, what is Power like day to day? Like, what kind of stuff did he do? How did he? I bet you he got an ill reputation. So seeing him depicted in the show and seeing what his day to day is like, it's just like I imagined. He's like a lot of my friends from Brooklyn. I love how Brooklyn is kind of depicted in this, because the genius is from Brooklyn. Old Dirty is from Brooklyn. Master Killer, who has not been featured, is also from Brooklyn. And then, Devon is locked up in Brooklyn House and stuff, and, seeing Staten Island have to come together while they locked up to survive, that's pretty cool. I think that taught them some valuable lessons, to transfer into Wu-Tang, because they say it's Staten Island against everybody, Staten Island against the world. So I think it was Wu-Tang versus everybody, it kind of transferred. You know what? Our last review was about 30 minutes. We're up to 20. Um, I'm not going to go much longer. I'm going to present 3 questions that I have for episode 2, and then I'm going to wrap it up. So my 3 questions for episode 2 is like, how do you feel about the boys being presented as like the man of the house?
Well, I mean, they were. I mean, their fathers weren't there. So, I mean, I think that seems appropriate. Maybe that's not your question, though.
Yeah. Well, I'm not going to disagree with that. My thoughts on it, though, are like, man, that's a lot of responsibility for young men to, live up to. Like, ideally, there would be a father, that had a certain amount of wisdom and experience that was there along with the mother. But, these boys are being thrust in manhood roles and forced to grow up too soon.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, the daughter, I can't remember her name. She has to do a lot too. I mean, she's always been told to cook and feed her family, her brothers. So
in those situations, all the kids
if you're
a
teen and you're older, you
they
pretty
got
much
a lot
have
of
to pitch in.
responsibility.
Yeah, so I don't think that the daughter. I think she's cooking and she's doing homework, and so I think really just if you're just a little kid, maybe that's the only time that you don't have to worry.
How
about
they
that.
say the Wu say life is a shorty, shouldn't be so rough. My second question is like, how is Divine being locked up? How does that affect his family?
Well, I mean, it makes Bobby have to step up. I think he feels like he kind of does. I mean, he feels. I mean, he does feel that he should. It probably hurts them because I don't know if would that fire have happened I don't think that fire would have happened if Divine were in jail, because that whole scenario would not have happened, right? He wouldn't have that place. They were in that old building, right? I don't think that they would have, because Divine would have been in charge, so that wouldn't have happened.
Okay.
So, I mean, yeah.
And then my third question is like, what do you think would be the best way for the guy with dreads and the chains? How could he have dealt with being robbed? What would have been a better way, if there is a better way?
Rather than killing the guy?
Yes.
Steal it back. I don't know. I mean, it's like take it back. If it's his,
steal it back. Well, you wouldn't steal it. You would just take it back because it's yours.
It's yours. Take it back rather than killing somebody. I mean, I guess it's like revenge. Like, you don't do that to me, so you're dead. I mean, it's sad. I mean, like the mom said, it's just stuff that can be replaced, but people's lives can't be replaced. So anything but that.
So I want to say this, and I'm not disrespecting anybody's life, hopefully. I know that character was well loved in Staten Island, and for all those who loved him, like, my heart goes out. But I do want to say, if I'm put in a certain situation, if somebody breaks into my house and has me at gunpoint, like, all bets are off. Like, I don't care about being fair to a person who invades my home while I'm with my woman and my family. Like, there's just certain things that you don't do. And if you break into somebody's house to rob them or to hurt them or do any kind of harm with weapons,
you sort of
be prepared to die.
There's some consequences, yeah.
If the person is anything like me, be prepared to die. And there's a lot of people who feel that way. You don't break into a person's home. Yeah. You know what I mean? There's certain things that you can do maybe in other places that's less threatening. But I mean, robbing a person is just dangerous, no matter where. It don't even have to be in their own house. But if you're gonna pull a gun on somebody and threaten their life,
then then you don't really want this person around anymore. So I mean, I can understand why you would do it.
Right. But I also understand how it is kids who grow up in that situation and they really don't want to do anybody harm. They just want what the other person has. And they go about it the wrong way. I don't know if there's any right way to go about it. I mean, the right way would be to earn it where you make enough money to be able to afford where you don't have to take from somebody. But I also understand the situations that these kids are put in, which make them feel like they have to rob and steal. Do I agree with robbing and stealing? Do I agree with drug dealing? No, but I understand the factors and the social conditions that lead kids to do that. And yes, I'm more partial and more understanding of the kids doing illicit things to get money, as long as they don't cross me. You know what I mean? Like, you could be a kid out there running wild, sticking people up, selling drugs, and I got your back. But if you stick me up or rob me or hurt somebody in my family, you may have to deal with the consequence. And I think that's how a lot of people in those situations feel.
And it's pretty reckless and stupid, honestly, because what did that guy think was going to happen to him? What was the character's name? I mean, I don't know what he...
I'm not quick to say it's stupid.
Well,
maybe reckless.
I mean, it seems pretty, it seems pretty reckless.
You know, to some of those kids, they think, you know, he got the goal, I need it. You know, and I'm gonna get it.
Yeah, but doesn't it occur to you that this guy is probably not going to be okay with that, and he's not going to just say, "Oh, will you just please give it back"? I mean,
a lot of them are living in conditions where those risks, even though they're very great, they're willing to take them at the drop of a hat. You know what I'm saying? You know, it's the have-nots always want what the haves have.
Even if they see their friends dying and they see their people in their neighborhood dying. So
hey, for 5 minutes of fame or 15 seconds of fame, it's worth it. Like, he was out there with the shirt open, with the jacket open, showing his shines that he had just took. Like, you know what I mean? And for that little while, you feel like you're on top of the world. And a lot of people, you know, I mean, me personally, I don't subscribe to that. Like, I do think of the consequences on the back end. Now, there are risks that I've taken in my life that are calculated, and I do think that some people are less calculating, and they put themselves in jeopardy far too much, like way too much. I've always been smarter. My mind is more like divines. Like, you know, if I'm going to do something, I want to think it through. I want to plan it, and it's for a good cause, you know, kind of like Robin Hood, rob from the rich to get to the poor. But anyway, that's enough. And I was trying to keep it under 30 minutes. I have, but barely. And I don't know. I think we covered everything. I think the 3 questions I had, I presented and we dealt with them. So, with no further ado, we're going to wrap this up and say peace. Tune into the series. And check it out. Some real interesting stuff. All right. 1.